Good morning. We're doing the Sunday school lesson for September the 6th, 2020. The subject of the lesson is God provides manna and quail. Our golden text is Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst. And our introduction is years ago, my young son complained to me about the fact that it was raining when he wanted to play outside. In fact, to hear him say it always rained when he was free to go outside. I asked him, who are you complaining to? I suggested that if anyone was responsible, it was God. At that point, his complaining stopped, at least until the next time it rained. Adults are often just as children in their responses to difficulties. How many times do we hear others, even ourselves, complain about the cost of different products, the long line at the DMV, or even the weather? The truth is, we all tend to respond automatically to difficulties without thinking. All we see is the problem rather than God, who is greater than our problem. Much less do we trust that He is using the problem to achieve His purpose. We can fault the Israelites for their constant complaining, but we should consider that they are mirrors to us. Let's bow for prayer. Most gracious Father, we come to Thee, first of all, to say thank you. Father, we come thanking and praising You for who You are, for You are God and God all by Yourself. Father, we thank and praise You for being the bread of life, the water from we're thirsty, Father. We thank and praise You for being our all in all, Father. We thank and praise You because whenever any problems or difficulties come our way, all we have to do is turn to You, Father, because we know that You are the answer, Father. Because You already told us, Father, that You will provide, Father. Whatever we need, You will provide, Father. And we just say thank You for being God. We thank You for being our creator, our provider, and our sustainer. We thank You most of all for Your darling Son, Jesus, dying that we might live. We thank You for His shedded blood that covers us, redeems us, and saves us, Father. Father, we have so much to thank You for, Father, but most of all, we just want to say thank You, thank You, thank You. In Jesus' name we pray. Now let's begin with our Sunday school lesson for today. God provides manna and quail. Now you know at this point of the lesson that the Israelites they had left Egypt, and they have only been traveling for about a month and maybe a month and a half, and they had crossed the Red Sea, and they had sung a song to God. They had praised Him for what He had done for His miraculous deliverance. For they had so much to praise Him for. All they had to do is remember His goodness, remember what He had done for them when they was in Egypt. Just remember. And that's what we need to do. We need to meditate on God, meditate on His Word, and remember, because difficult times will come. And if we don't remember, we will lose our perspective. And once we lose our perspective, we start thinking about the problem, and we forget to think about God and what God can do and what He has done and what He will do. Because He already told us He'll never leave nor forsake us. He will never put more on us than we can bear. He already told us that He is the way, the truth, and the life. So whatever problem we have, we know God is bigger than any problem we have. Any problem we face, we can just turn to Him. Again, I said, before we get too hard on the Israelites, let's look at ourselves. Because there are times we think we don't meditate on God's Word like we should. So when problems come, we don't even have nothing to fall back on. So we just wallow in our problems, just like the Israelites did. But one thing we know, God will provide. And if we look in this lesson, one thing we must remember when we go over this lesson is perspective. Do not lose our perspective, church. I don't care what we go through. Do not lose your perspective. Because if you lose your perspective, you lose sight of God. Now let's begin with our verses. And the whole congregation of Israel, of the children of Israel, murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, would to God we had died by the hands of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then said the Lord unto Moses, behold, I will rain down bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the sixth day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and there shall be twice as much that they gather daily. And Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel, at even, then you shall know that the Lord hath brought you out from the land of Egypt. And in the morning, then you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he that heareth your murmuring against the Lord, and what are we that you murmur against us? And Moses said, this shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, for that the Lord heareth your murmuring, which you murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmuring are not against us, but against the Lord. And Moses spake unto Aaron, said unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your murmuring. And it came to pass, as Aaron spake unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked towards the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, I have heard the murmuring of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, at evening you shall eat flesh, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. And it came to pass that at evening the quails came and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay around about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone upon, behold, upon the face the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as a whore, frost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna, for they wist not what it was. And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. Now we know the Israelites, when they left Egypt, they left with food, they left with the cattle, they left with cows, and they left with clothes, they left with shoes on their feet. In other words, God prepared them for the trip. They had everything they needed for the journey. And we know one thing about Moses, God prepared Moses for the journey. He spent 40 years in the wilderness. Moses spent 40 years in the desert. He spent 40 years in Pharaoh's house. And all that time, we didn't know it. Moses didn't know it, but God was preparing him for the task that he had for Moses. And one thing we know, if God calls you, God prepares you. He don't let you just go out blind. God will prepare. And he prepared Moses, just like he prepared the children of Israel for the long journey that lay ahead of them. And one thing we can say, that when they was in Egypt, they cried unto the Lord to be delivered, because there rose a king that knew not Joseph. And when this new king came into the throne, he didn't in other words, he didn't know Moses, so he was afraid of the children of Israel, because they grew so rapidly and everything they did was prospering. So that he said, who are these people? They outnumber us. What if they turn against us and join the enemy and fight against us? So what we should do is make life hard for them. So they made them slaves. And it's one thing, you can make a person a slave, but you don't have to mistreat them. You don't have to be mean to them. So what they did, once they made them slaves, they mistreated them, made life hard for them. Why? Because they was afraid of them. And that's what fear will make you do. Fear will make you make decisions that you would not make if you was not afraid. Had they not been afraid of the children of Israel, things would have continued as it were. But one thing we know, like I said, once you lose your perspective, who knows what you might do? So they made the Israelites slaves, and they was in bondage for like 400 years. They had to stay in Egypt for 400 years. But we know they had to stay there because God had already told Abraham that his seed would be there for 400 years. But they didn't have to be under such hardship, because they built the cities, they did everything for them, they made their life so easy for them. So, but Pharaoh, now they was working for him, and they got jealous of them. So what they did to make life harder for them, now they had to build the cities, and they was building these brick walls, these cities with bricks. So they made them go out and find their own straws to make brick. And even whatever task they put on them, they prospered. Even though they had to make the same amount of bricks that they made when they was giving them that straw. But it's one thing about God. God will make a way. God made a way for them. So everything they had to do, they was able to do it. So what the king of Egypt, they know that they was not just fighting against the children of Israel, they was fighting against God. But one thing I say, when things begin to be hard, do not lose your difficulty. Don't you lose your perspective and begin to complain. So when the children of Israel got into the wilderness, they soon came into the wilderness of sin. They was in the wilderness without water. They didn't see any water, so they began to complain. And what was they saying? Moses and Aaron, you brought us into this wilderness. Why did you bring us out here? Now, remember, you were the ones sitting back there complaining, asking God to come and deliver you. And one thing, when God delivered, he delivered his own way, his own direction. It was God's direction for you to go through the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, well, God, we wish to God that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt. Now they know God's hand was awful powerful and mighty because they saw the miracles and the plagues and the things that God did to the Egyptians. They saw the firstborn die in Egypt. They saw the firstborn of the Egyptians die. And they saw the plagues that God brought against them. They saw the water turn to blood. They saw the fish in the sea die. And the people didn't have food. They didn't have water to drink. So they knew God was mighty. They knew what God could do. And knowing that God was mighty, and okay, now you are my children. They were the children of God. Then you know that God will take care of you. He had already told you he would take care of you. Now, one thing we can say, it took like 100 years for God to get them out, for Moses to get them out of the land of Egypt. But it only took them a month and a half to start complaining about Moses and to say that they wished that he had killed them while they were sitting by the flesh pots. In other words, what they're saying is, when things was good for us, we was sitting there, we was enjoying food to the full. Now, things wasn't that good for them. Maybe they did have food, but we know one thing, things was not good and was not easy for them. But when you begin to complain, like I said, you lose your perspective. And you begin to see things as though they were, but they was not like you were saying they were. And that's the way it is with us too. So like I said, don't get too hard on them. That their flesh pots was the food that they had. The garlic, the onions, the leech, all those things that they was missing was nothing but condiments. They wasn't adding no quality to their life. But when God prepared, God add quality to your existence and quality to your life. And just like the Israelites, now when God freed us and saved us from sin, a lot of us, just like the Israelites, look back and we want to go back to that old lifestyle. But think about it. Do you really want to go back to that old lifestyle that you lived before you were saved? And the Israelites, no, you didn't want to go back to that lifestyle, because had you gone back to that lifestyle, you weren't just going back to the food. You was going back to the slavery that had held you bondage for so long, that had caused you to pray to God and ask God to deliver you. And yet God heard your prayer, but God was going to deliver you, and he did deliver, but he delivered on his own time and his own way. So there was coming a time for deliverance, but God had to do it his way. So they said God had brought them out to the wilderness to kill them. No, no, no. Didn't you see what he did to the Egyptian firstborn? He could have did that to you, but he didn't. He saved you. And no, he wasn't bringing you to the wilderness. He was going to carry you through the wilderness, because what kind of testimony would that be for God to bring his children to the wilderness and not be able to supply their needs? One thing, when God saves us, he's able to supply everything that we need. And he doesn't always give us exactly what we want, but he will give us what we need. And we said to them, one thing, when God brought them out, the clothes that they had on lasted, because God knew they needed clothes. The shoes that they had on their feet lasted for that 40 years as they was traveling through the wilderness. And one thing about it, their feet didn't even swell while they was going. Think about you walking for 40 years on your feet and your feet didn't even swell. Why? Because God knew exactly what they needed. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or not. Now, yeah, I'm going to send them some food, but there are restrictions. I want them to only gather enough for that one day, because I will supply your daily bread. I supply your daily need. I know you have that slave mentality where you think you have to hold up everything, but you don't, because I am your Lord. I am your God. I will provide for you. So God want to know, do you trust me to provide for you? If I can provide manna for you for one day, I can surely provide manna for you for 2 days. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. So they was to go out and they was gonna gather this manna, and on for 5 days they was to gather enough for one day. But on that 6th day they was to gather enough for 2 days, because on the 7th day they was not supposed to do any work. Now God is so gracious. God was giving them a day of rest, and they didn't even realize it. Because what did they do? Some people even went out after he told them not to, or they didn't have to, looking for manna. But it wasn't there because he'd already told them it would not be there, that you gather enough for 2 days. But one thing, they was mumbling against Moses, and that said, Moses, you brought us out here, and the Lord, you brought us out here in this land to kill us. So Moses told them, you're not mumbling and grumbling against me and Aaron, you're grumbling against the Lord. So, children, when you grumble against the church and when you grumble against your pastor, don't you know you're really grumbling against the Lord? Because God is the one that placed him there. And as long as he's preaching and doing what God told him to do, whatever your problem, whatever you think your need is, go to the Lord in prayer. And the Lord will hear you, but God don't like the mumbling and the grumbling against his men. Just like he told Moses. Now, the children did not realize at that time that the Lord was getting ready to provide for them. Even Moses didn't know what the Lord was going to do or how he was going to do it. But he knew one thing, that God knows your heart. God knows what you need. God knows what we need. God knew the children needed water. He knew they needed food. And there was no food there. But what God was doing was teaching them to trust him, to rely on him to provide for them. So God was teaching them. And God said, in the morning then you shall see the glory of the Lord, but that he heareth your mumbling against the Lord. What are we that you mumble against us? So Moses said, now you might not know it, but you're not really mumbling against us, you're mumbling against the Lord, but the Lord hear you. So what he's telling them, in the morning you're going to see his glory. And when they talk about the glory of the Lord, you're really talking about his presence. God was going to show you that I am the one that's with you. I am the one that's leading you. So Moses told Aaron to get the people together. And what he wanted them to do was look towards the wilderness. And when they looked towards the wilderness and look up in the sky, what was they going to see? They was going to see the brilliance of God. They was going to see the magnificence of God. They was going to see the glory of God. And when we speak about the glory of God, we're talking about his presence. God was so gracious to the people. He even showed the people that his presence, even though he was with them, because they was traveling by a cloud in the day and a fire at night. Wasn't that the presence of the Lord? Moses couldn't do that. Aaron couldn't do that. Only God could do that, provide for them like that. But yet that wasn't enough for them. They still wanted to complain. And so what Moses said, what he told Moses to tell them, this evening you will have flesh to eat, and in the morning you will have bread to eat. Now, it's nowhere it says that Moses went and prayed to God and told God that the people are mumbling, that they need food. Moses didn't have to tell God, because God already knew. Because Moses didn't have food either. Aaron didn't have food either. But God will feed you in his own time and his own way. So what he told the people, that in the morning, that in the evening, now you want food? See what God is going to do. God is going to rain down quail. before when you what the evening quail's gonna cover your camp. And we know that the quails always fly south, but this day God was going to direct them to the camp. And there was a lot of people there. There was millions of people, so there had to be an awful lot of quails because we know that the quails are small. But there was enough quails for them to eat to their full. And when they ate, they would have no reason to complain because God would satisfy their need. God will satisfy your need. He don't always satisfy your wants, but He gonna always satisfy your need. So when they ate the quail to the full, now how did they catch the quails? We don't even know. We don't even need to know. How did they prepare the quails? We don't even know. We don't even need to know. But we know one thing: God supplied the quails, and they had enough quail to eat to the full. And He told them, and in the morning, you will have bread to eat. Now, at this time in history, we only see quails one time. They only had the quail that one day to eat, and that was that evening. But that morning, they was going to have the bread of life, bread, that God was going to rain down bread for them. So God rained down the bread, and when they saw the bread, they said, "What is this?" So they said manna. Manna is a question. What is this? That means that they didn't know what it was. Moses, they didn't know the name of it, but one thing Moses knew that God said He was going to rain down bread. So when the dew dried up, they saw all this bread. So Moses said, "That is the bread that God said He would rain down for you." Now, one thing we can say about the bread that God sent for them, that it was just what they needed, not what they wanted, because they had a long journey ahead of them. And we know that their bread supplied their need. They was able to be satisfied. Now, that time you eat, but you're not always satisfied. You can eat what you want and not always be satisfied with the meal. You can get up and say, I wish I had a little more. I wish I had this. But with the Israelites, when they ate that bread, they ate it to the full and their appetites was satisfied. And what I mean when I say it was satisfied, it had all the nutrition, all the vitamins that they needed for that journey. That's what they had to eat for 40 years. But it supplied the nutrition, it supplied all the vitamins that they needed, and it was enough to satisfy them. Again, God will satisfy your wants, and He will, but not your needs. And so what God told them, now, I will supply your need. But you have to remember, they was complaining, saying that they didn't have food to eat. But remember, when they left Egypt, they left with cattle, they left with sheep, they left with goats, they left with animals. So they can't say they didn't have anything. God didn't leave them out there with nothing, but God knew what they needed. So one thing we can say, they had milk because they had cows. They could have cheese, they had cows. And they knew that they didn't want to kill the cow because it would take too long to prepare the cow. And God knew they didn't need to kill the cows either, because had they killed the cows, they would diminish their supply of milk and their cheese. But God would not put a hard task on you. That's what the slave did. So God made it easy for them. They didn't even go to God in prayer. They didn't even ask God to supply their needs. God just supplied their needs because God knew exactly what they needed, and God heard their mumbling. We never said that God heard their prayer. It said God heard their mumbling. So church today, don't let God hear us mumbling. God should hear our praise. God should hear our prayer. God should hear us being thankful and gracious to Him. It's the same way with the Israelites. They should have been praising God and thanking God for what He had already done for them. How soon we forget. How soon we lose our perspective. How could you only a month or so after leaving Egypt forget all the miraculous things that God have done for you and not realize that God was able to supply your need? God was able to take care of you. Just like I said, the food that they ate had all the nourishment and vitamins in it. But yet they sit there talking about they missed the leech. They missed the onions. They was missing the garlic. They was missing what they had in Egypt. You didn't have nothing good in Egypt. Come on, remember what you had in Egypt. You had a hard time in Egypt. That's what you should have been remembering, the hard time that you had. And that should have drove you to thank God and to praise God. And today, God could have punished them and said, I'm not gonna do anything for you because you do not appreciate what I've done. But that's what man do. Man will judge, and man will talk about punishment, but God will talk about satisfying your need. So how many of us deserve the goodness of God? Just like they didn't deserve it, we don't either. We do not deserve what God do for us. We do not deserve the death of his son, but God did it because of his graciousness, his goodness, his mercy. It is God that who's gracious and good, and that supplies our need in spite of our mumbling and our grumbling. Because we don't always thank God like we should. We don't always meditate on his word like we should. Because if we meditate on his word, we will be more thankful. We will be more joyful. We will always have a song of gladness in our heart, a song of praise on our lip. We will always be ready to praise and thank God. But just like the children of Israel, we don't always meditate and do what we should do. So we cannot always come down so hard on them. But one thing we said, they did not have the word of God like we had the word of God. But they should have had the memory of God because they witnessed with their own eyes. They witnessed what God done. They witnessed that Red Sea. Now, how many of us would think? Now, I think, but I don't know because I wasn't there. But I would say to myself, oh, it's no way I will forget that Red Sea crossing, that even if I forgot the things back in Egypt. And the reason I said that is because all we could see was horses coming. They were so outnumbered. So we would think that they were so outpowered because of their chariots, because of their horses. And here we running with children. All we have is our feet. We don't have anything to cross to help us get away from them. So we think. We have to hold our children. We have to hold our children's hands and run with them. And we know children can't run fast, but thank God they didn't have to run fast. The reason they didn't have to run fast because they had God on their side. God told them, you said, today you will see your enemies no more. So just trust God to take care of you. Trust God that when you get to the Red Sea and you can't go backwards, you can't go to the north, you can't go to the south, but you can always look up. Look up to God and God will answer your prayer. But they forgot to look up to God, but God was right there on time. So what God told Moses to do was stretch out the rod and the sea divided and the ground became dry and they was able to step out on dry ground and cross the Red Sea. Yeah, they was running and they was afraid, and I would have been afraid too. But one thing we do know, when they got to the middle of the sea, they looked back and here was Egypt. Here was Pharaoh's army. But the water started coming together and the Pharaoh's army drowned in the Red Sea. Now you talking about dying at the hands of God. You could have died at the hands of God at the Red Sea. But no, God took care of you. All the way, God have been taking care of you. God have been carrying you on wings of an eagle. God prepared everything for you. And all you have to do is say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Don't complain. Stop complaining. Don't you know that just like Pharaoh's army drowned in the Red Sea, that could have been your fate. But no, God didn't bring you to that point to kill you. God was just teaching you how you need to trust him, how you need to rely on him, how you need to believe in him. Now, one thing for sure, God knew exactly what it was going to take. God knew that they had been in slavery. They had been in Egypt like 430 years. So it was going to take a long time. It only took, like a year to get them out of Egypt. But it took like 430 years to get the Egypt out of them. So one thing we can say, and it even took longer because even during the Old Testament, they was always wrestling against the old man, just like we wrestle right now. So that's where we're with them. They was never really free, because God was still, what God's plan were, God had to get Egypt out of them. So what they kept remembering Egypt. They kept remembering that old life. So God knew exactly how long it was going to take to get Egypt out of them. He knew it wasn't going to happen overnight. But God is a patient God. God is a loving God. God is a long-suffering God. But God was right there with them all the way, because In order for them to be profitable, God had to not just get them out of Egypt, but he had to get Egypt out of them. So sometimes it take longer than we know or longer than we think to get Egypt out of us, to get sin out of us. Yeah, we've been saved, but we still have sin in us, just like Egypt had, just like the Israelite had Egypt still in them. They had those old ways. Those old ways were still there. But church, remember, turn to God, trust in God, believe in God. God will take care of you. God will meet your needs. God will satisfy your needs. God will God will send you water, and God will send you food. Whatever we need, God have it. Just don't lose your perspective. Just don't start thinking back to how things used to be, because things was not that good, and things will never be that good until you are in the hands of the Lord. Now you can look back at the world and say, "Oh, we used to have a good time." Maybe you did, but didn't have God, so it wasn't that great. Nothing is good until you have God on your side. Once you have God on your side and you begin to praise and thank God, then you can say things are good. Things were never good until you have God on your side. So remember, God is not your problem. Aaron and Moses is not your problem. Your memory is your problem. Things that you remember, that was the problem, church. You're remembering things you should not remember. So God have already told us what we need to remember. We need to remember his word. We need to meditate on his word. Just like the Israelites needed to remember the miracles that they saw God perform. That's what they needed to be remembered. They needed to remember that Red Sea crossing. That was things that they needed to remember, to know that they had a mighty God on their side, a powerful God on their side. That God drowned the whole army in the Red Sea. And you tell me you think he cannot supply your needs? He cannot take care of you? Now, when you left Egypt, you didn't know that you was going to be leaving with the cattle. You didn't know you was going to be leaving with gold and silver. But God made sure that you didn't work there for nothing. When you left, you got paid. You were paid because you left with gold and silver, with cattle. You left with clothing and shoes that lasted. How many people can say they have a pair of shoes that last 40 days? But these people's shoes lasted 40 years. I mean, for 40 years they wandered in the desert. They wore that same pair of shoes in the desert, and they walked. Now, I'm not talking about walking around in the town or walk here or there. They had to walk, and yet they didn't get tired. The shoes didn't wear out. The clothes didn't wear out. Look at God, how God provides. Look at what God can do. Only God can do that. Man cannot do that. So again, when when you begin to murmur and grumble, remember, you're not grumbling against man. You're grumbling against God. So be careful what you say. Remember, it's God that provides. It is God that provides for you. It is God that can perform miracles. It is only God that can rain bread from heaven. It is only God that can cause those quails to come to your camp and encamp right there for you to kill and to eat. God has a way of supplying your needs. Just like he prepared Moses for the journey, he have a way of preparing you for the journey. Now, this is a journey that we are going through in this life. We are journeying through this life. And as we journey through this life, remember who's on our side. God is on our side. So remember, as we go, we have to thank God and remember the goodness of God. Remember what he's doing for us, what he have done for us. Remember God. Never forget God. Never lose your perspective and start thinking about the problem and start concentrating on the problem. Concentrate on God. If we concentrate on God, things will be so much better for us. Don't start remembering that old life saying, I remember when we sit by the flesh pot, because the flesh pot is nothing but sin. That's what they was remembered, slavery and hard times. So if we start talking about what we remember when we was in the world, it was nothing good. It was nothing that gonna help us get through heaven. Only God's plan to get us to heaven. And only God can save us. Only God can provide for us. Even when we was in the world, it was still God that was providing for us. We cannot do anything without God. But we know with God all things are possible. Even the sinners have to rely on God. But they don't realize it. But God is God that sends the rain. It is God that sends the sunshine. It is God that sends the air that we breathe. So we all need God. We need God, children. Just like Israel needed God, we need God. And thank God for his mercy, his grace, and his goodness. Thank God that God don't judge like man do, but what God do, God think about our needs. God looks at the heart, and he knows the need. Even before we express it, God already knows the need. Just like he told Moses before Moses was able to tell him what the children was doing, he told Moses, I know what they need, and I will supply their need. And God knows what we need, and he will supply our need. Thank you. So I hope someone will be helped by this lesson today. And we're due to time we have to end. So that's the time.